Hi everyone, and welcome to this MyCode technical video. Today we'll be taking a look at the Mi-Forms JavaScript API so that you can begin scripting for any form that you want to deploy to the iOS devices or the Android devices. So first of all, to get started, we have three basic Mi-Forms JavaScript APIs that you can use. There are, of course, other ones, but these are the three main ones that we'll be concerned about for most of your forms, and that's what we will be taking a look at in this example. There's the after open event handler, after set data event handler, and then there's also an after ink added event handler. So before we dive into any sort of code, let's take a look at an example form that we have here on the right side. Here I have an iPad. I'm going to go ahead and start my form. And as you notice, as soon as I begin my form and the form opens, the after open event handler fires, of course. And when it does so, it runs through this code that basically says, find me or show the current date timestamp whenever the form opens. If I were to close this form and then reopen it as well, we would find that the same event handler would occur at that time as well. So as the form opens, it updates with a new date timestamp here for the dynamic label. Now, in the same way, we can also act on any time that data is set for any field in our form. So here's a field called initials. I'm going to put in my initials here. And then as soon as I dismiss the keyboard such that the actual field gets a value, then we run through some more JavaScript code here, and it basically displays that value up here in a dynamic label where I say the initials value entered is DRN. Very similar to that is the after ink added. Here I've got a signature field. I'm going to go ahead and ink on it. You'll notice I'm inking, and as soon as I'm done inking, then add the after ink added event handler fires off, and again we show another date timestamp in the dynamic label. So how is this all done and wired up? Let's go to the designer. Over here I have the designer. This designer is actually Mi-Forms version 10, which looks very similar to previous versions. With one big exception here, or one new feature that we have, is under File, Script, JavaScript. You'll notice here that the script editor is updated for JavaScript with a much improved IDE experience. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to see our code a little bit clearer. But we have our code area here. In the top right, very similar to the VB.NET form script editor, we have our events tree. So if I were to double click, let's say, onto the after page change event handler, it'll create a stub for me, and then I can begin coding within my stub for this particular function. I'm going to go ahead and remove that now because we're going to focus on the three that we created here. Before I move on, we also have an errors list down here. So as I begin coding or continue coding, any sort of JavaScript type errors will show up here and give a short description on what's going on. One of the things you'll notice in this code is the use of underscore form. Underscore form is going to be your main go-to Mi-Forms JavaScript API object that will have most of the methods that you'll want to use in your forms as you begin using the JavaScript API. To get more help, you can simply go to the help and then click on API reference or API reference web. Web will show you a web HTML version of it. It'll look something like this when you open it up. As you can see here, here's the namespace of mycode.myforms.mobile, but what we're concerned about is the form and the form methods. There's a number of different methods. The ones that we're going to be concerned about today are get value and set value. So here we use set value to set the value of the first parameter is just the name of my field that I want to set a value for. In this case, it's DLMF after open, which is short for just a dynamic label that I created on my form. And then here's the string value that I'm going to set it to. I simply set it to this form was opened on such and such date. So this date is created, this date object, and I just convert it to a string so that I can see what the value is. In the same way for after set data, very similar, only we pass in the field name. So whenever any value changes for a field, this gets fired. And you need to know what field that is, and that's what the value, the field name value is. In this case, I want to know whenever somebody changes the value of initials, then I want to run through this code right here. I get the initials by using getValue, set it to this variable, and then I simply set the dynamic label to this particular string here that you see here. Very similar is our use of the after ink added event handler. We pass in a field name. You need to know what field got ink, and that in this case it's a signature field. Signature in this form is a free form. So free forms, image annotations, and also hotspots will trigger this event handler whenever the user interacts with those types of fields. If they add ink or if they tap on a hotspot, it'll go through here. And in this case, it's very similar to after open event handler, where I simply set the value of a dynamic label to a date-time string. So that sums up how the JavaScript API works, and it's a good place to get started, especially if you're used to .NET programming, VB.NET with our forms scripting engine that we've traditionally had. Now we have this JavaScript API, but this should help you get started. We appreciate your time, and thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of us at support@mi-corporation.com. Thank you.